where they're heading now, is to try and get to those, because the grass just holds that level of nutrition a little bit longer. But there are some really thin buffalo moving in that herd. And as always, you can hear the fork-tailed drongos. They're constant companions, flying behind the herd and picking up any insects that might come through. Are they heading straight in the direction? There we go. That's the fork-tailed drongo I was talking about. Well done, Wium. Well spotted. Catching insects that the herd kicks up. Heading straight towards Zoe's Road. I think that's where they're on their way to. Okay, well that was a nice surprise. Keeping up with them is going to be fairly tricky, so I think I'm going to leave them for now. I'm going to pop out towards Zoe's Road, which is where James is headed now, looking for tracks. So hopefully they don't obliterate his wild dog tracks, having destroyed my leopard ones. There's not much for them to eat, in answer to that question. It's a very, very tough time of year, and the worst part is that this is December. This is when it should be at its best. But we've still got another 8 or 9 months before the next rainy season starts. And that should be the time when they really bulk up in anticipation of the dry season, in anticipation of winter. And they just don't have the opportunity to do this. Now, this area would have gone through natural cycles of drought and rainy seasons for the last however many hundreds of thousands of years. But there's a lot of suggestion from scientists that this is not entirely natural, this drought, and that there's a degree of man-made or man influence on it. Just doing one more circuit of quarantine. The thing about tracking wild dogs is you never know where they're going to pop out. And that hyena that we heard calling, Ryan, no, I don't think it spooked the buffalo. I'm not sure what did. They were on edge. It could have been because they could smell leopard scat. I'm not entirely sure. They might just be on edge because every animal is under pressure at the moment. The hyena was quite far away, and they would have known that. They would have been aware of the fact that it was a distance from them. Not sure what spooked them, but I'm going to do another loop around just to double check. You might even find that buffalo herds spook because of wild dogs, even if it's a short-lived fright and then they turn around and go and chase them in the same way zebras or wildebeest might do. Looks as though James's zebras are going down to the dam for a drink. That you had a question to ask James earlier with his zebra, but missed out on the opportunity because we got distracted by the buffalo herd. But Aqua, you wanted to know what species or subspecies of zebra these are. And the answer is it's the only one that we get here. It's known as a plain zebra. I always knew them as a virtual zebra, but the official name has changed to plain zebra. And when I get a nice view of them, I'll explain a little bit about the differences between the various zebra species. But they're not subspecies, they are distinct species. It's the Grevy's zebra and then the mountain zebra as well, but not that we get in this area. Oh, hello, little one. they're going to start making their way towards the dam for a drink. Okay, I'll stop here so you can go past. There you go. So in answer to Aqua's question, if we have a look at them, most plain zebra or Burchell zebra, their stripes extend all the way down to their feet. And then if you look between the thick black stripes on the bum, you'll see those shadow stripes or the slightly browner stripes in between the thicker stripes, and that's usually the most distinctive sign of a plains or a Burchell zebra. It's the only species that we get here. And there those stripes extend all the way down. And interestingly enough, just chatting about subspecies, as we saw with this particular herd, the only subspecies of zebra that you get, or used to get, it's now extinct, was known as the quagga. And it was thought of originally as a half horse, half zebra, but as it turns out was a population bottleneck of Burchells or plain zebra that would have happened about 60,000 years ago. And they're now trying to recreate that effect through selective breeding. It was a subspecies that was essentially poached out during the time of the first European settlers. One female here, I'm going to try and get you a view of her, that's so pregnant. She's bulging. And all zebras look big and round because they've got that hindgut fermentation system in their digestive tracts. So having pointed out the sort of identifying features of the Burchell zebra, in a mountain zebra, to answer Andrew's question, the stripes do not extend all the way down the legs. That's one of the biggest ones. They also don't have the shadow stripes that I mentioned in between the thick black stripes, those thin stripes that look like dirty spots. And the stripes also don't really extend all the way down the center of the stomach. So those are the clearest differences when you're looking at the different species of zebra. Shoot, that foal's so sweet. They're gathering up some courage to go and drink at the dam. I'm going to try and give them space just because I think they're quite nervous. And I don't want to make them any more so. Keep them from having a drink. So we'll give them a nice wide berth. Things are thirsty enough without us adding to their deprivation of water. But why I had to take the bumpiest route, I don't know. Guys, shame. Always a little bit nervous when it comes to drinking time at the waterhole. And there's a hippo there, which I think is adding to their nerves. He's shown tendencies at times not to want to share. They've decided they're going to go drink at the overflow section, where the water's slightly filtered. I'm not going to go and push down in that direction just because I don't want to startle them. So the water flows out of this pan and down into the mud there. So that's why they've stopped to drink there. You can see how, just looking at this space, there used to be, when I first started working here, apart from the fact that there was plenty of water in there was grass here. This whole clearing up into this pan, had grass in it. And now there is absolutely nothing. Sorry, crew, just an answer to your question about the most, there you go, you can see there's absolutely nothing. But just an answer to crew's question about the most common animal we get here. Probably the most numerous is the impala that's decided to brave the stream, come for a drink. That's our most common antelope, and therefore also the most common prey species out here. There's easily, I would say, there's a huge amount of them. Just within our little area, within Wium itself, which is about close to 1,000 hectares, there's probably close to, I would say, 2,000 of these creatures, maybe a bit less, maybe 1,500 that move through. So easily the most numerous antelope. That, of course, I'm talking about the big antelope. I'm sure that there are more numerous species of things like dung beetles, and you did ask what the most common animal is. So I'm sure there are insects that are more common than that, and maybe even certain bird species at certain times of year. Zebras are still drinking. While I carry on my search and maybe even get a nice view of these zebras, let's head back across to James and see how his search for the wild dogs is going.
Right, so I think many of you have seen that the wild dogs have been found on Arathusa in front of the dam cam. They cross back into Untitled Chapter, then they cross back towards that dam, and that's where they are now. We are not going to go there. There are already about 74 different game drives trying to get into that space. We had a wonderful sighting there yesterday, and I think it will just be absolute mayhem trying to get into that area. So we're not going to do that now. We're going to go and check on the new hyena den, see if we can find anything there. Perhaps we'll pop across to the old hyena den. And then also, we'll just look around for the wily Karula, the equally wily Tingana, whose tracks were found this morning around here. I had tracks going from this area sort of towards the east, but Tingana headed south yesterday evening. We saw him as we went to bed. And so I'm not sure where he is or where these tracks were from. You know, lots of action around. So often though I find you come out in the morning, you've got a plan to find the dogs, you find the tracks, then you find leopard tracks crossing them, lions roaring in the deep south, and you just think, well, we're not going to be able to know where to look next. And then what happens, of course, is that you find nothing except the old wattled starling. But that's okay. It's just how it goes. Beautiful clouds this morning. It's supposed to get quite hot again today, which depresses me slightly, but I'm sure we'll be alright. And then Bryan was just saying that there apparently has been huge rain in the Karoo. Now the Karoo is the central region of South Africa. It's a semi-desert region, and they've apparently had quite a lot of rain recently, so that would be very nice if that rain comes this way. And if you ever do come to South Africa, I mean, most people will come to the game reserve here, might do the garden route, which is the southwestern Cape, beautiful part of the country, and often the Karoo, the central kind of most open expanse of land, is just sort of ignored. Nobody goes there, but it is the most amazing place to go and see, because if you ever have a feeling of the need for solitude or this kind of endless space, with the amazing, beautiful vistas and just a sense of solace, that's where to go. Some truly stunning parts of the world are to be found in South Africa. know why on earth it is dark where you are in the world and light where we are in the world. Now, Eugene, I do a little demonstration with a piece of elephant dung, and I can show you exactly why that is the case. But before I do that, Eugene, we're going to try and get to the hyena den first. So I will try and show you, but before I show you, I will try and explain to you. Eugene, the world is like a big soccer ball, right? It's round. Now, what you can try and do, and I'll try and do this a bit later for you with a piece of elephant dung, is take a soccer ball or a balloon or something round and go and put it in front of a light, in front of a small lamp, or get a torch, a flashlight, out and shine it on the ball. And pretend that flashlight is like the sun. And you will notice that you cannot shine the flashlight on both sides of the ball at one time, right? You can only shine on one side. So the one side, if you're shining on one side, other side of the ball is going to be dark. There won't be any light coming from the flashlight on that ball. Now the sun and the earth are the same thing. The sun is the flashlight and the earth is that soccer ball or balloon. And you live on one side, at the moment you live on the side where the sun is not shining, and we live on the other side where the sun is shining. And then as that ball turns around, remember the sun doesn't move, but the ball turns around, the earth turns. As it turns, it will become light where you are, and it will be dark here. Now I'll try and show you what I mean a little bit later. I'm just desperately need to try and get to that hyena den before it gets too hot and the hyenas disappear. Nice question, thank you, Eugene. Very clever that you've noticed that. But maybe ask your parents, because I'm sure you're up quite late for a 5-year-old, Eugene. Maybe ask them to get a flashlight and a soccer ball to show you why it is that it's light in South Africa and dark in wintry Arkansas. Of course, the fact that the wild dogs are now on Arethusa would indicate why all of the impala and the zebra and the buffalo and every other antelope or herbivore we've seen this morning has looked full of the joys of spring, totally relaxed and not panicked about anything at all. Now, we probably missed those dogs by minutes. Monkey Man, you ask a question that has a difficult but a fairly depressing answer in some ways. You want to know if we find lappet-faced vultures here. The short answer is yes, in theory. The long answer is fewer than we used to. And certainly there's been a real dip, I think, in vulture numbers of the area. I think half because the vultures are being used in traditional medicine, much like sort of rhino horn vultures that have cultural uses in medicine, especially for sort of diviners and traditional doctors who think they can see the future. Vultures are supposed to be able to see into the future because they're always around carcasses. I'm not sure how the two meld, but anyway, that's the story. So that's one of the reasons they're disappearing. And also, there are so many vulture restaurants. So around tourist hotspots in the mountains and below the mountains, and so the vultures don't have to be around here quite as much as they would normally. So yes, we do sometimes see lappet-faced vultures here. I certainly haven't seen as many here as I used to, for example, at Gondolosi to the south of us a few years ago. So yeah, I don't know where they all are at the moment. Definitely been some elephants around. They've continued to make an enormous mess here. Fresh elephant activity. Beginning to wonder if we'll ever get to this hyena den. You can see this is the kind of thing they do here. They make a tremendous mess. While they're looking for things to eat, they push the trees over and they move on totally ignorant of the trials of trying to drive a Land Rover through this area. Certainly Bryan and I tried to follow a leopard through here the other day during a big cat week, and it became completely impossible to try and get the vehicle through there because the elephants just push the trees over like this and you just can't get past. plying our way towards our new den. Now, for those of you who weren't on the walk yesterday morning, that was very lazy of you, you should have been. Wium and I had a wonderful walk, and we walked down through this area. In fact, it's actually past here. And we were trying to sort of make our way, get away from some buffalo. They weren't chasing us, but they were certainly grazing towards us. So while we were doing that, we spotted a hyena. There's a kudu running away. And that hyena eventually led us to a den. Not a very different and distinct from the main den that we've been looking at for the last, almost 5 weeks. And probably a subordinate female who's giving birth in another den. A beautiful kudu over here who will probably run away as we get anywhere near her. She is. Hello, madam. Beautiful in the light. That's a female kudu, one of the largest antelope that we get here. In fact, that is the largest antelope that we get here, the kudu. I guess she's about the same size as an elk if you happen to be in the United States. Maybe a little bit bigger. Quite unusual to find her on her own, and I think you'll find that there are a few in and amongst the bush here. Oh, and listen to that. There is the southern boo-boo. Such a lovely call. Normally in a duet, it's just one of them, obviously waiting for the return call. Isn't that lovely? Perfect morning song. Right, to the hyena den we go. In Ohio, we were chatting about the boundaries, of course, that the dogs have crossed, and you want to know if other safari groups are able to come onto Juma and Arathusa, or do they have to respect boundaries? It depends where you're from, Romy. There are very, very complex relationships that the landowners have around these areas, and they're pretty small packages of land, lots of scrub hair running across the road. Lots of different safari lodges here with different owners. The owners all have different relationships with each other. There are some fairly substantial egos knocking about the place, and so it really does depend on who's who likes who and who doesn't like who thinks who's being nasty to who. But the short answer is yes. Some can come onto here, some can't. So Buffelshoek comes onto Juma, Torchwood comes onto Juma, Cheetah Plains can come onto Juma, Chitra can't. Arathusa doesn't come here. We go to Arathusa. It's all very complicated. But those kind of rules are very strictly enforced. Really confiding to us, this kudu. Trotting off now, but those rules are very strictly enforced, and there's nothing that gets up a large ego's nose more than a boundary incursion. So we're very careful not to cross the boundaries that we're not allowed to. A lot of these farms also, of course, have been split in half many times, and I know that down in the south is a farm called Dudley, and Dudley is I think it's got now about 50 different landowners. So I mean, there's an old problem in the world where, as generations go down, very quickly you find that the farm is split into postage stamp size packages of land. And of course families eventually all will fight with each other. That just seems to be an inevitability of humanity. So there can be some conflict, and it's quite amusing to watch the politics unfold if you're not actually involved in it. The short answer is yes. Boundaries are very strictly enforced. Animals, of course, don't give two hoots, so they come and go as they please, which is wonderful. And that's only in this sort of section of the Sabi Sands, a little bit in the Timbavati, and the Kaseri, that area up there. The rest of the Kruger is just government-owned, and the Manyaleti is government-owned, and so that sort of stuff doesn't occur. It's just, that's one landowner, that's the government. Matthew, very nice question in Los Angeles. If you want to know about a success story, you say we're constantly hearing about animals that have been stories of sort of conservation destruction and the fact that animals are declining everywhere. And you want to know, are there any success stories of animals that have increased over the last century? Well, Matthew, absolutely there are, because the Kruger National Park proclaimed in 1926, and its precursors, the Sabi Game Reserve and the Shingwesi, proclaimed I think in 1910 and 16 respectively, and at the time the Sabi Game Reserve was proclaimed, and that's the area that we sit on now roughly. There were only 8 elephants around. There are now at least 15,000 elephants in the Greater Kruger National Park, so that's a huge success story. Lions, the same story. White rhino, exactly the same story. This area had to be repopulated with rhino at one stage, not because of poachers. Well, it just depends entirely on your definition of what a poacher is, but because of the hunters that came into this area and totally renewed it of any kind of rhino, elephant, lions, so yeah, lots of success stories over the last 100 years as the history of this magnificent wildlife area has progressed. I think I've turned off the road at the right spot. I hope I have. So we're just going in now. I think that the hyena den is in and amongst that thicket down there. If it isn't, it's because I've been yapping so much, not concentrating when I'm driving. I suppose another success story, Matthew, would be the wild dogs. That's a more recent one. Certainly their numbers declined quite drastically, down to 150 at one stage a few years ago. They seem to be back up to about 300 or 400 in the Kruger National Park. Right, Bryan, let's hold thumbs. We'll get through this field of teak. Sammy, you want to know if wild dogs and hyenas will fight each other? Sammy, the short answer to that is yes, absolutely they will fight each other. They do not like each other one little bit. All the predators out here will compete with each other. They don't want to be around each other, and so yes, they would definitely fight if they came across each other. But they do try and avoid conflict as much as they can. Here's the mound there. Mound just inside this thicket. activity there right now. We are a little bit late. It's always worth just popping around, seeing who's here and what they are doing. Wium and I saw yesterday, and she may well have done her suckling already, so there won't be any little ones. I think it's going to be worth spending just 10 minutes here to see if she doesn't call the youngsters out. And I think, like I say, we're probably about 10 or 15 minutes late. It's just starting to warm up now, and you can see a path that leads between two holes. She's lying on the sort of far end of one of them. There's the path there. That's it. It leads up around into another hole on the mound. She looks very content there. So Wium and I, this is the one, exactly the hyena that we saw yesterday. We came past here.
Yeah.
You got a cub. Is there a cat there, Bryan?
She was creeping out from behind her.
There's a bit of a noise coming from behind her, Bryan said. Let's get out my powerful binoculars. Last used by Alexander the Great during his conquest of Egypt. There was a question from Josh in Missouri that I've managed to miss, but let's get Kirsty to read it again. Thanks for your question, Josh. Josh, you want to know what the average lifespan of a hyena is. Josh, I'd say the average lifespan probably sits at about 13 years. In captivity, I'd say potentially up to 20 years. Life is hard for a hyena out here. So as soon as they start to lose condition, as soon as they start to lose any kind of muscle mass, you'll find that they will struggle then to keep going and keep surviving. So probably at their ultimate health at around 10 years old, and after that there'll be a slight decline, and then it'll become quite a slippery slope from there. So I'd say 12 to 13 you'd be quite lucky to get to if you're a hyena. This one looks like it's sleeping very soundly indeed. I really hope we can see the youngsters here. Definitely worth sitting here just for a little bit longer. And Sandra, yes, I mean, me too. I wonder the same thing that you do. Sandra wants to know, wonders if this is the same hyena that we saw a little while back that looked so pregnant. Sandra, I would say probably, but I find it almost impossible to identify these hyenas. I find it difficult enough to identify one leopard from the other. But hyenas, yeah, adult hyenas, almost impossible. But could well be, Sandra. She's certainly sound asleep. Bryan, should we try and sneak into here? Get her up. I'm just going to try and move. She seems to be completely relaxed with us, so I'll just try and get into the shade. Oh, there's another hyena coming out of a hole. Wow, that's unbelievable. But that looks like an adult. See that? Hole in front of us there. at least 2 adults here at this den. How many pups or cubs? I can't believe I used the word pups. They are not pups, remember, they are cubs. Who knows? But what I'm going to do, everybody, is I'm going to start this virtual reality rig. So please excuse me while I make one clap, and you'll hear a beep, 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 beep sound, which might attract the cubs out. I don't think it will.
Let's give it a second.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, we're just recording some footage for this virtual reality thing, a 360-degree view of the world that ball of GoPro cameras on the front gives. Say when, Bryan. Okay, so Cam, Gray, you're going to hear me clap and then I'm going to explain.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Just have to redo something quick.
Oh. That is the virtual reality rig. Say when, Bryan.
We are rolling.
We are rolling. 7 cameras rolling. So that syncs everything. That's for the editing process. And now we just basically enjoy. And Cam, you want to know what this thing is, what that furry thing on the front of the there we go, adult hyena looking up. The furry thing is the microphone that records the sound. Very unglamorous. So what I'm going to do with you now is I'm going to pretend that you are just an audience as opposed to an interactive part of this. And I'm going to do a little presentation to the VR rig, and you will then understand basically what it's for and what we do with it. So pretend that you have not seen me yet today, and we are just doing a virtual reality kind of show. So it would go something like this. I'm now, of course, slightly embarrassed. Basically, I'm performing now. Good morning and welcome to the hyena den. There's some elephants just behind us. Elephants coming in just behind. And if you look behind us, you can see the elephants. We're at the hyena den. Off to the front, if you look to the front, there's 2 hyenas, one sticking its head out of a hole, the other to the left-hand side. And some elephants walking gently past on their way there. You'll hardly be able to see them. It's early morning in the northeast corner of South Africa. Western Kruger National Park, and the most perfect scene is unfolding. We're at a brand new hyena den, hoping that some youngsters might come out, some little cubs, 2 adults, obviously looking after things here at the den. And there, a magnificent herd of elephants walking into the rising sun. Up above, the sky is totally clear now. The dawn clouds have burnt off. You can see the knobthorn above us, beautiful trees all around. Up to the left-hand side, you can see more knobthorns growing out of the termite mound that the hyenas are lying on, and some tambuti trees, iconic trees of Africa, beautiful smelling, very toxic to human beings. There go the elephants there. You'll just see their shadows moving silently through the trees. What a privilege that is. And in the background, you can hear, or you could hear, Tinker Barbet going. May have actually been Southern Boo-Boo. Obviously, through the trees above the mound, you can see the dawn sun. And there's Southern Boo-Boo in the background. Gentle breeze blowing out of the southeast, hopefully going to keep things a little bit cool today. The summer has been a very hot one. right, everyone, that's how we do the VR stuff. It feels very strange performing it like that for you. Anyway, so that's what we have to do, and that then will eventually, that might become a live thing. I'm slightly suspicious that this 360-degree thing will become a little bit like the 3D filming was or is. It becomes quite niche and doesn't become very mainstream, but we'll see what happens. So this footage will go off to various companies that are kind of trying to put together these virtual reality experiences. So you can imagine, as I was pointing out things there, if you saw the bobble of GoPros, if you're sitting where that is, it'll basically feel like you're sitting where that is. And if I point to one side, if you're wearing the correct kind of headgear, if I point to one side, you'll be able to turn your head and see exactly where I'm pointing, and then look back at me, and you can check where my hands are pointing. You'll be able to look up into the blue sky that I pointed out. So while Bryan has to frantically swing about the place trying to follow me when I'm talking, that isn't the case with the virtual reality stuff. But it's very much in its infancy at the moment. Well, certainly as far as this stuff goes. That's the Game Drive channel getting going again. So nothing's happened here so far. That adult, of course, has sat up slightly, but that's all. There might be more than one litter of cubs here. It would be so fantastic. Sean, very nice sort of postulation here. You say you reckon May's mother, who may well be the matriarch of the clan, lives here because we never see her. Bryan, we're looking at 2 hyenas there, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we've actually got 3 hyenas here. Sean, I think you'll find that she might be around here, but a hyena doesn't live at a den unless it's got cubs or unless it is a cub. And so while it's well possible that she's around here, she won't be a permanent fixture at any den. So there are definitely 2 hyenas that Bryan's looking at there. There's one big adult, and then one sort of looks like May's age, lying in the hole. Looks like one hyena if you just pass your eye over it. It looks just like one that's bent in a slightly odd angle. Oh, the viewers, of course, are much cleverer than me, and you knew that there were 3 here. PK, you and I, you want to know how old that cub is that is seemingly suckling, or semi-suckling. PK, I would say about the same age as May, so about 8 months, maybe a bit older. Doesn't look quite as fluffy as May, but unless it stands up, I won't be able to tell exactly. Can't believe we haven't found this den before. And that it's so easily accessible from the road, which is great. There was another one that we found a while back that Brent found, but it was completely impossible to get to in a vehicle. And if Brent decided that he couldn't get a vehicle there, then you can be fairly sure, unless you had a tank or a bulldozer, it would have been impossible to get in there. You can possibly hear the delightful little breeze blowing through the trees here. A wonderfully calm and peaceful scene. Robin calling in the background. So, Jim, a nice question about the wind and the elephants and whether there was a smell and whether those elephants heard or smelt these hyena. Jim, think about a hyena den, and I mean, Bryan, you must tell me if you think I'm talking nonsense here, but, you know, we've spent a lot of time at hyena dens, and it's very seldom we actually smell them, right? Unless they're marking with their anal glands, which they do sometimes, then you do tend to kind of pick up a whiff, which isn't a very pleasant one. But generally they're not very smelly, Jim. Now, I'm pretty sure that the elephants with their much more sensitive olfactory senses would be able to smell hyenas. But I don't think they would have reacted, no. I think that they would have... they may have told the calves to stick to the middle, but I don't think that they would have reacted anything like they would have if they'd been, say, smelt lions or seen lions. Right, we're going to stay here, Bryan and I, just see if what transpires. But let's head across to Jamie, see what she's looking at. I think she's looking at some little carnivores. We'll see you just now.
And right in the middle of the road, where I was about to go driving, oh, a little bit of grooming going on there. There's an entire family of dwarf mongooses that have, I think, slept in a little bit later than normal, just because it's been a bit chilly. But you can see how they've adopted a burrow right in the middle of the road. Seems like a funny place to settle down, but each to their own, I guess. And if you catch a faint shimmer every now and again in the air, that's coming from Rusty's engine. But at this time of the morning, they spend... Oh, ouch, that looked a bit sore. They spend a bit of time sunning themselves and warming up, and also grooming each other. Sure, Rusty's very hot, judging by that heat wave coming up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're definitely showing a certain reluctance to be out foraging. It's a time for warming up and a bit of grooming. This morning light, you can see that beautiful rich brown color. Different dwarf mongoose in different areas will have subtle variations in the color. They range all the way from brown to an almost gray color. That little one is a troublemaker. Lots of nipping and biting going on there. It started out just before you came across to us as gentle grooming between two members of the group. It's now reached the point of the odd nip. And there's something incredibly intelligent in those stares. The reason they got a sudden fright there was because a hornbill landed just off to the right of them. Oh, here comes a second. And we've chatted a lot about the relationship between hornbills and mongoose. And they have quite a close, mutually beneficial relationship. So the hornbills will come out, join this group of dwarf mongoose on their foraging expedition, provide an extra pair of eyes, in this case an extra 2 pairs. Although slightly, I always feel that the hornbill have a slightly manic look to their expression. And in return, they get, oh, here comes another one. They get to catch whatever the mongoose leave behind. So a useful way of having a symbiotic relationship. I've chatted before about the fact that the same group of hornbills will form a relationship with the same group of dwarf mongooses. And that an occasion where the hornbills are late, the mongoose actually show reluctance to leave their burrows. Although I think this morning it's more to do with the unusually cool temperatures that we have. And in this particular light, I agree, Anna-Marie, they do look very soft. And if I didn't know better, I would almost say cuddly. But I do know better, having been on the receiving end of those teeth before myself. Oh, scrap. Sure. Mongoose are... It's probably the most aggressive I've ever seen dwarf mongoose. But yes, they do look very soft and very silky. And they look cute and cuddly until those sharp little teeth make themselves apparent. And yes, Marianne, who is watching in Boston, they do eat snakes. Now, Marianne's... Oh. See, they're not that cuddly. Marianne's seen a documentary on grey mongoose killing cobras. And although dwarf mongoose might be reluctant to tackle a cobra, I've heard of them mobbing them before. And I've heard of them mobbing puff adders as well to get rid of them. But yes, they will kill and eat snakes. Oh. Some early morning scuffling going on. This is more playful than anything else. But as I said, having been on the receiving end of mongoose teeth before, no fun. Oh, we've got, sure, serious savaging going on here. Of course, I suppose it's inevitable in any communal society that there might be some conflict. And Jim Butler, you wanted to know a little bit more about the difference between dwarf and banded mongoose. And they're both sociable creatures, and they're both animals that we find here. They're 2 out of about 4 mongoose species that you're likely to see on a fairly regular basis. I've only seen banded mongoose here once. They actually prefer, compared to the dwarf mongoose who like this sort of area with lots of termite mounds, banded mongoose actually seem to enjoy the nice sandy riverbanks and those kinds of areas. And the only time I've seen banded mongoose out here has been around the Mulwati drainage line, where there's lots of sand for them to burrow into. And apart from being the only other communal mongoose that we find here, they are quite considerably bigger than the dwarf mongoose. They're also, in my experience, slightly more shy. Dwarf mongoose, I found, if you sit for an extended period of time very, very quietly, I've had dwarf mongoose try and climb up my tires before, out of curiosity. They tend to be a bit bolder and a bit easier to habituate. And then the banded mongoose, as their name suggests, obviously have bands across their back, stripes, and they're slightly grayer in color, but the biggest difference is their size. Other than that, they fill a very similar ecological niche. They forage in a very similar way, and they conduct their social structure in quite a similar way as well. And the mongoose in question that I keep mentioning was a little banded mongoose that hung from my eyelids. my eyelid with its teeth once, but she eventually found a home with dwarf mongoose, which is a very artificial, very unusual situation, but it does go to show that there's quite a few similarities between them. The other two mongoose, of course, that we get in this area is a white-tailed and then a slender mongoose. D-hugs. A couple of weeks ago, we had a white-faced mongoose. It's the only time I have ever seen anything like it, and you were wondering if I've seen it since. The answer is no, but I did see a post that was put up by, I think it was in Coral, about a white-faced mongoose that looked very similar to the ones that we saw. So I saw this for those of you who missed it. It was a dwarf mongoose with a completely white face, perfectly symmetrical. It looked as though it was wearing Halloween face paint, and it was around Halloween. Oh, got a fright because the hornbill flew over. It's all right, it's just hornbills. You can see how fast their instinctive response is, even when they look like they're preoccupied with other things. So I wrote into a friend of mine who studies dwarf mongooses for a living, and I asked her about this white-faced mongoose because I have never seen anything like it in the wild. And she told me it's actually fairly common when something's happened to the mongoose to scar it, whether it's a snake bite that's caused the fur to fall out, or some kind of burn, or an interaction with an allergic reaction with some kind of plant or insect, something like a hairy caterpillar, that causes the mongoose to lose its fur and to cause slight scarring on the skin. And for some reason, when the fur does grow back, it grows back white. But this was an incredible looking creature. I've never seen anything like it before or since, but I always look for it whenever I see a dwarf mongoose family like this. Now, if we did want to see it again, we'd have to look in the sort of regular areas that we see them, because they're quite territorial, little dwarf mongoose families, and they stick in their own little areas. So although this particular family will have dotted burrows all around the place, they will only really move in quite a small area. So if we do look for that white-faced mongoose, it will be around Triple M on Arethusa or around Zebra Drive. And I look there every single time I go past to see if our white-faced mongoose has ever made an appearance again. But one of those little rarities that makes sightings like these so special. Hey, little guys, you're not up too much. Reluctant to leave. One animal that you won't get out here, but that fills a very similar niche, is the mongoose. And Diane, who's watching in Texas, you were wondering if they're related. Yes, they are. They're all part of the Herpestidae family, as far as I know. And essentially, a meerkat is a desert mongoose, pretty much, found together along with the yellow mongooses of the Kalahari. And also a very similar family structure, although it's not necessarily, in the case of meerkats, not necessarily only the alpha pair that breeds, as it is with dwarf mongoose. I know that James was racing about this morning looking for the wild dogs that eventually found their way onto Arethusa. It's interesting to see how the most endangered predator has a very similar social structure to the smallest predator that we get out here. Because in dwarf mongoose, both the alpha, it's only the alpha male and the female that breed. With meerkats, it's slightly different. But all of the mongoose family, as well as the badger family, are united or put together in the same sort of evolutionary groups by the presence of one very smelly anal gland that they use to anal paste both around their burrows and on each other. Puts them closely related to things like genets as well. And yes, absolutely, Helen, that is their scat that you're seeing in the foreground. It does look large. It looks quite surprisingly large for an animal of their size. Also something that tells us, apart from the anal gland, it's also, thanks mongoose, well demonstrated, much appreciated. Also something that puts them in the same or similar evolutionary line as the civet, another animal where their feces or their scat looks exceptionally large for the animal size. And yes, that is their scat. And they're usually deposited all around the entrance to the den. It's a good indication that a dwarf mongoose family is living in that area. Both Chaza and Virginia, you were wondering about the sounds that the mongoose make, and they've got one of the widest vocabularies of any of the mammal species out here. They've got at least 14 different calls, and the most common that you'll hear is when they're out foraging and they squeak a little bit as a sort of a contact call. They also make an almost purring sound and a churr sound to contact each other. Lots and lots of different sounds meaning different things to help unify and to help bond the members of the group. They've also got lots of different alarm calls. So if something flies overhead and the mongoose gives it an alarm call, it will mean something different for, say, an eagle or a snake, because their responses have to be different. So just like the meerkats, they have different alarm calls for different predators. And the other sound that mongoose make that I have learnt is they can hiss. If you take a mongooses food away from it, or it thinks you're trying to, which, by the way, was the prelude to the mongoose hanging from my eyelid story. Sorry, it wasn't my eyelid, it was my nostril. It was my friend's eyelid that it was hanging from. Two different occasions. That particular mongoose thought we were trying to take her food away, and they can hiss. And they can hiss very aggressively, and speaking from experience, it is a warning sound to be heeded with absolute full caution. Definitely avoid their sharp teeth at all costs. A lot of people look at them and think that they'd make the most wonderful little pets. It's not true. They have a very, very set social structure. They're very bright, they're very intelligent, but they have their social structure that they enact in the wild for a reason. And they've got their alpha, and they've got the way that they interact with other mongooses. And you'll find that with human beings, that doesn't translate terribly well into human society. So if you ever get a guest, the first thing that the mongoose tries to do is to anal paste on them, because that's just how they say hello. And that's if you're lucky. If they don't like your guest, or if they're feeling particularly possessive over you, then your guest is met with a combination of anal pasting and really nice little half-moon bite shapes all over their ankles. So not an animal to be taken on as a pet. The one that I'm talking about was not mine. It was a friend's, but it did end up in my care for a while, and was orphaned and left alone and stranded, and was probably going to have died in the wild. So my friend rescued it, and they didn't really know what to do with it. But they're very, very affectionate little creatures if they like you, and not to be kept as pets. As sweet as they look, and as similar to the ferret as they look. I'm going to continue on my journey and leave our dwarf mongoose family. I might have to do a very circuitous loop, but while I do, let's head back across and see what James is up to.
Right, so we did a little turn around the whole den here, nearly broke jigger on various trees the other side of the mound, and we've come back to this area where there is complete and ultimate peace. So much so that Bryan and I started to get rather heavy-eyed as we sat here. There's the most beautiful breeze blowing gently through. There's a grove of tambuti trees here, under which, as Bryan describes it, the hyenas have built the holiday den. It's a real relaxed vibe about it. It's a lovely shade, golden light. And really, I mean, if I was to sit here for much longer, I'd be fast asleep. Now, Patty, nice question from you. How many hyena clans are there in the area? And we've referred to a hyena group as a clan, not a pack. Kathy, you want to know how many there are here. Patty, sorry, I think. You want to know how many there are around this area and whether this is a new, sorry, it's Cathy with a K, not Patty with a P. You want to know if this is the same clan or a different clan from the one at the other den. It's the same clan. Cathy, it is perfectly normal for there to be different mounds, certainly for subordinate females to be lurking at as a different mound from the central one. I'm assuming the other one's the central one because I think it's been active for longer and there are more hyenas there, and it seems to be slightly larger, although pretty similar size probably. Some other adult seems to be sitting up. Come on, call your baby out. But definitely the same clan. These are probably just subordinate females that are lurking around here. The clan itself, I think, extends a little bit to the south of us, a little bit to the north, and a little bit to the east, but definitely centralized on Djuma. And then there's another huge clan of about 35 hyenas to the west on Arathusa. And they apparently have got 4 or 5 active den sites. So the hyena's doing very well in the area. Now, Renee in Villa Park, you were watching a few days ago. We found a very injured male hyena. He had been bitten on his ears and on his face. He was limping quite badly. He went and he sort of bathed himself in some grubby water and then disappeared into a drainage line. There were calls for us to put him out of his misery and would be calling the vet. And I said, hang on a second, everyone, just wait. They have an amazing ability to heal themselves, the animals out here. Well, we saw him the next day. Yes, he had a bit of a limp, but he was limping much faster than he was the day before, and he was off on a foraging mission down to the south of the reserve into a property called Hoffman's. He was absolutely fine. Now, look, he was limping a bit, but just that 24-hour period had given him enough time to go foraging again, enough time to recover so that he can go foraging. So, yeah, amazing. I mean, he would have... initially, when I saw him, I also thought this chap's on his last legs. But he managed to recover, and that's what happens with animals out here. They just have the most astonishing ability to recover from injuries that you and I would consider fatal. And I think you'll find that our own bodies, certainly in my experience, I know that we get a sore back or we get a sore shoulder or something like that, and we go rush off to a physiotherapist or to a chiropractor or some other medical practitioner. We shove drugs down our throats in order to make ourselves feel better because we think we need to. And half the time, when I've been out in the bush and I haven't had access to kind of medical care, well, not if I really needed it, I could get to a hospital or something like that. But you can't rush off to physio or a chiropractor or get some painkillers. It is astonishing what your body is able to cope with doing. And by way of example, I remember when I started doing this job, the constant turning to the camera started to really hurt my back and my shoulders. And I woke up one morning thinking, I don't think I can do this job because my back was getting so sore, my shoulders were getting so sore, and something in me just said, just give it a few days. And it was incredible how my body adjusted. And now the animals out here, of course, they don't have anything like the medical attention we've had as kids and growing up in cities. They can recover from just about anything. One leg, you bit a hyena's leg off, well, you obviously wouldn't do that, but if a hyena bit another hyena's leg off, you'd be amazed to know, a 3-legged animal could actually survive out here. Right down to the insects. Insects, I've seen insects which normally have 6 legs, surviving with 3, all on one side of the body. Somehow they get by. Susan, very nice observation from you. You've noticed that hyenas walk, unlike a dog or a cat or a horse or anything else, basically, that they walk with two left legs, then two right legs, 2 left legs, 2 right legs, as opposed to right front, back right, Sorry, let me go again with that. Front left, back right, front right, back left. So that kind of 4-beat movement that your normal dog does, or any cat. Susan, there's one other animal out here that does that, and I'm going to put it out to the viewers to tell us what that animal is, and then if they haven't got back to you in 5 or 10 minutes, I will tell you what the other animal is. Totally unrelated to the hyena, completely unrelated. So try and think about what other animal you've seen walking with both left legs and then both right legs at the same time. And I think you'll be quite surprised. Hello, Curtis in Virginia. Obviously, hyenas are known as scavengers, but yes, they are great hunters as well. And you all know the biggest prey I've ever seen them take down is Curtis. I didn't see this personally, but in this area down south, they did kill an elephant once. It was only a 4-year-old elephant and a fairly disabled elephant, but they did kill an elephant once, a clan of about 20 hyenas. I think you'll find that they'll take down buffalo sometimes in this area, but they largely scavenge here. In East Africa, they'll take down some pretty big stuff. And certainly if you read in any of the books, Curtis, the big animals like rhino and elephant and hippo, it'll say, under the heading of predators, so this animal has to worry for nothing but man, lions, and sometimes spotted hyena. All right, I think we should leave these chaps, head towards Buffelshoek Dam, see what's going on there, and I'll come back here, I think, this evening, just to see if there isn't some kind of answer to what cubs there might be here. So, Kendall, you're 16 and this is your first time watching us and you want to know how many cubs there are in a hyena litter. Kendall normally owns 2 in a litter. In fact, 2 to 1 or 2. 2, of course, is the norm. They're twins. Now, if they are both female, one of them will kill the other, and so you end up with 1. If they're both male, they'll be fine. If one is male and one is female, and they're born to a dominant female, often the female will kill the male. So it is quite an interesting kind of arrangement, totally unlike the cats and the dogs. Dogs, big litters, a lot of them will survive. Cats, slightly larger litters, often 3, sometimes up to 6, but normally sort of 2 or 3. But then there's a kind of real, there's a bond that forms between the cubs. Not so with these. Once they get beyond a certain age, if they're male cubs, then there will be a bond. But if they're females, females will often kill the other cubs. So thanks for that, Kendall, and welcome. Thank you for getting hold of us and keep asking us questions and giving us your comments. We're going to head towards Buffelshoek Dam now, see what we can find out. We'll come back here later in the day. Remember the quiz that I was giving you? Hyenas walk both left legs and both right legs at the same time. There we go. Sacrosanct, Country West, and many others. You will have figured it out. The other animal that walks with both left legs and both right legs at the same time is, of course, the giraffe. But they're the only 2 that I know of that do that. Right, goodbye, hyenas. So happy to have found that then. Sorry, my comms are a bit quiet today, so I'm going to ask Kirsty to repeat what she last said. Ah, yes. We'll also try and find a piece of suitably round elephant dung so that we can do the demonstration for Eugene, assuming he's still awake, of why it's dark in Arkansas and light here in South Africa in June. find a way out of here that's a bit easier than the one that we took to get in. Because this is a field of roundleaf teak trees. They have very large stumps underground. You can very easily snap a steering rod. I would not like to be following wild dogs on the hunt through this area. While we get out of here, let's head across to Jamie for an update. I'll try and find a nice round piece of elephant dung, and we'll see you shortly.
Wium and myself have come up to the Buffelshoek boundary to see whether Tingana's decided to head across in this direction, just to bamboozle us completely and go in the opposite way to the way he was going last night. No sign of any tracks coming through in this direction. We've been chatting a little bit about... what is that? Hold on, Wium. It sticks. The birds this morning have not been playing fair. Oh, no. I think it was a Wahlberg's. Well done. Nope. The birds this morning are feeling particularly camera shy. One of the joys of conducting live safaris when your subject matter has wings is that quite often it likes to disappear on you very quickly. What was I talking about? Saying something about... Oh, we're chatting a little bit about leopard movements and whether or not they have any kind of a pattern to them. I'm trying to work out if we could actually say that there's an established... Oh my word. Please stick around. There is such a tiny baby warthog there. Running away. Unfortunately. Let's see if we can get another view. The warthogs here tend to be so skittish. There's Mom. Stop here and just see if maybe they're going to relax ever so slightly. They are so tiny. Well done, Wium. Cute. Now it's difficult because this camera has the most amazing zoom, but those little things are probably... I'm trying to give you a sort of a rough size. You've ever seen those micro pigs that people have as pets? That's roughly the size that those little things are. They look like little teacup pigs. Cute. Let's try and roll forward, see if we can catch them on the other side of the termite mound without scaring them away. Seen lots of baby warthogs recently. Good thing our brakes are so supple. Hello, little one. There you go. You can see it in comparison to Mom. Straight under her belly. And those little tiny tufts of white fur around their faces, only just starting to come through, that are meant to, in theory, meant to look like they have tusks and make them look more fearsome than they actually are. I'm not sure how successful that really is. That's not a particularly fearsome looking creature, is it? fact it looks a little bit wobbly as well. And of course, one cannot help but look at warthogs and think immediately of Tara. Actually, that sounded terrible. I didn't mean it like that. I mean because Tara loved to see warthogs. Tara, if you're watching, I apologize. You know what I meant. Too cute. They're so young that the manes along their backs haven't even properly grown yet. But young and tiny, but already foraging. If we watch what they're doing, I would say that these little things are probably about, I don't know, it would be a guess, a month and a half old, and already at least partially weaned, similar to what we've seen with the impala babies already. Because out here it pays to be able to be self-sufficient as quickly as possible. She's managed to raise 3 so far. Well done, Mom. And just looking at her tusk size and her physical size, I'd say this is actually quite a young female. This might even be her first sounder, her first little family. Usually you see groups like this. Quite often females will band together and live in burrows together, just for an extra safety in numbers. Thank you, Mom, for being so obliging, keeping your babies here. And droughts like the one that we're in is going to impact particularly hard on little warthog families. And one of the creatures that are, I would say, one of the most sensitive to different climatic conditions. And they really start, especially the young ones. And if there were to be a sudden rain shower now and a sudden drop in temperature, you'd find that a lot of warthog babies, despite the fact that we desperately need of rain, would probably die because of it. Just because they are so sensitive to sudden changes in temperature. Too cute, though. Already foraging on its elbows like an adult. Maybe having to learn the hard way which types of food are more edible than others. Luckily, we've got this incredible zoom. Well, we were on the lookout for Mr. Tingana before we got distracted by these warthogs, and James Richards, he was saying, let's hope that Tingana isn't in the area. For those of you who missed it during Big Cat Week, Tingana performed one of the most, probably to me, the most amazing things I've seen a leopard do, which was to climb completely, full body, tail, everything, into a warthog burrow and pull out a piglet. Going off with Mom. I think they're going to have disappeared. Roll forward again. But yes, maybe they heard Tingana's name mentioned and got a fright. It's interesting how we chatted a bit about it yesterday, about the fact that he's almost specialized in burrowing animals, from what I've heard. He likes aardvarks, and apparently he likes to take little piglets as well. I did not know that warthogs squatted like that. Random piece of information that I've just learnt that you can all join in. Warthog squat. Oh, shame. Still drinking milk from Mom. Cute. Not the gentlest of sucklings. Mom, stop. Mom, I'm trying to drink. Struggling over access to milk. She's absolutely not interested. Just going to carry on foraging. Just going to keep walking while the piglets hang on for dear life. It was a nice, sweet little interlude. And of course, for new viewers whose knowledge of warthogs might be based on the Lion King, warthogs do not really live solely on bugs. In fact, most of their diet is entirely vegetarian. And they will munch on grass and bulbs and tubers and roots that they can dig up. That's mainly what they're doing during their foraging time. They might consume an insect or two by mistake, but generally that's not within their traditional diet. Interestingly enough, though, just like pigs, and bush pigs as well, which we also might see in this area, they will forage off carcasses, or they will scavenge off carcasses as a way of supplementing their diet. So it just provides that little bit of extra protein for them. It's quite unusual, though, and really only in dire times. The other animal that does that fairly commonly, apart from warthogs and bush pigs, is, name's gone out of my head, is duikers. Duikers will also eat carcasses. What is there? That's zebras in front of us. Yes, I think it's zebra. Thank you, warthogs. They've disappeared. Let's go have a look at these, see what else we can find. While we head off down Buffelshoek Pipeline, let's go back to James and see what he's been up to.
Heading towards Hunter's Moon from the Monolithic border, and there's a lion within about 100 meters of it.
Morning, Alan. Confirm you got a Ingala or some Ingala busy lungeling those Nyali?
Yeah, she's about 100 meters behind. She's moving.
Copy. Confirm they're coming south from Big Dam side.
They virtually level with Big Dam's wall, and they're heading towards Hunter's Moon.
Okay, copy. Thank you. And you say you just got vision of one Mafazi?
Yeah, I've only seen the one. She's now running after them.
Samong Gonzo, yeah, that's Mon, also the Nyati, running stream, yeah. Then I got Ingala on my left hand side here. Oops, you got Talabati there.
I don't know if we're live or not.
Our zebra also being a little bit camera shy at the moment. Let's try and get another view. There's two very cute, very fluffy foals. Since we seem to be having a little bit of a cute. stop for one moment, just because I know if I move now, he's going to run away. Looking very spindly and observing us very closely. Zebra foal that's only a month or two old, still got covered in that little fuzzy baby hair. Cute. And the rest of the herd moving steadily north into Buffelshoek. Interesting. I've seen quite a few more zebra than I have seen in weeks on just this particular morning. And I'd love to know what it is that goes on within the animals' minds and within their decision-making process. Rusty, I would prefer if you went into reverse. Thank you. Found it. It's interesting to try and figure out exactly why it is that you can go without seeing zebra for about a month, and then all of a sudden there's several individual herds all wandering through the same place. That's going to be the last view we have of them. Definitely one of the more striking animals that you can see out here. You see those involuntary twitches as it moves along in response to the flies. Now that zebra is about 20 meters away from us, which is about 60 or so odd feet. And you can start to see why stripes are actually such an effective camouflage method. Gone. Totally vanished. One of those interesting aspects of it. You wouldn't think that black and white would be the way to go in the bush, but it definitely is, especially if you think about seeing that in black and white, as predators do, since they don't have color vision. You can see how effective it is as a way of disappearing and melting into the bush. Fascinating thing about zebra stripes is that no one really knows exactly why zebras have stripes. The dominant theory, of course, is that it's a good camouflage method. But why is it that zebras are pretty much the only prey species that have that black and white striping out here? If it's such a magical camouflage method, why don't other animals, or why haven't other animals evolved to have it? It's something that's very hotly contested amongst different evolutionary biologists. Most people think it is the camouflage reason, but I've heard all kinds of theories put forward, including the idea that it acts as a thermoregulatory method. So with the black stripes heating up faster than the white stripes, it makes micro air currents that then cool the zebra down, which doesn't make all that much sense to me. An alternative theory is that it disrupts the vision of insects so that they struggle a little bit more to land on the zebra, to know exactly how to land on the zebra. Also one that I have a bit of a tricky time believing, because I've seen just as many flies and ticks on zebra as I have on any other creature. But still something interesting to just bear in mind is that our traditionally accepted theories aren't necessarily always absolutely accurate. No evidence of Tingana moving north. Those warthogs, I mentioned that they're particularly sensitive as an animal species to different fluctuations in temperature changes. But Pete, you were wondering which animal suffers the most in a drought. I'm not actually joking when I say that I think probably fish are one of the most obvious victims, and frogs as well. The frogs are really struggling. I have never experienced a summer in the bush before where I have heard so few frogs at night. We should be seeing them, hearing them all the time, and there are hardly any out there. And even the foam nest frogs that have built their nests above temporary puddles are going to find that none of their tadpoles survive, just because there's going to be no water for them. In terms of the mammal species, which maybe is probably what you were looking at in terms of an answer, your buffalo are going to struggle seriously because they're bulk grazers. So they can't alternate their diet with, they can supplement their diet with trees, but for the most part, they are built to be grazers, and there's absolutely no grass. Even the trees are holding on to a little bit more in the way of nutrition than the grass has been. So they're going to have to move further and further afield. They're also water-dependent creatures, so they need to drink every single day. So animals like buffalo are probably top of the list. Even the elephants are going to start suffering because they've got such enormous bulk bodies to keep and maintain, but at least they've got that bulk to fall back on. They've got those reserves of size to help sustain them. Now, there's going to be quite a few animal species that really struggle. The predators are going to have a great time. Predators and scavengers are going to be sitting pretty. There's some buffalo to show you. Oh, it's very dense in here. We saw with that buffalo herd, I might be able to see from here. We saw with that buffalo herd earlier, there were some thin-looking cases, some of the older females looking very bony. Well, these guys are okay. The Duggar boys, they've still got a bit of bulk and muscle around their haunches, which is usually the first place you start to see the animal struggle. And there have been more serious droughts in the past, and usually what happens, or what's associated with them, as well as the starvation of the animals and the dehydration of the animals, is that there are outbreaks of anthrax that start to occur. Anthrax spores that have been dormant for long periods of time are triggered by the drought, and they start to spread to different animals. And it's around this sort of time that you'll notice all of the four presenters have been usually quite happy to jump out and start playing with carcasses and have a look at them and explore them. And you'll see that the drier it gets and the longer this drought continues, the more reluctant we'll be to actually go anywhere near them. And that's just standard and safe bush practice. If you find a carcass, particularly something where you can't see anything wrong with it, at this time of year or in this kind of condition, you don't touch it, because there is a chance. Anthrax is a naturally occurring disease out here. While I head and have a look at Buffelshoek Dam, let's find out what Mr. Henry's up to.
We went off to Buffelshoek Dam as promised, and Buffelshoek Dam is now just a dry mud, not even wallow anymore, a collection of dry and cracked clay. So the good news is that nothing else is likely to get stuck in there, as it did on Christmas Day when Andrew and I went in and we pulled out an impala using this bungee cord, which I then let go, and it shot off into the middle of the dam and was irretrievable because of the softness of the mud. And I walked straight to the middle of the dam today and picked this out. So the mud has got very hard and the moisture has reduced immeasurably. So, yeah, the drought continues. The bush gets drier. No longer is that a refuge for buffalo to go and lie in the mud, hippo to go and lie in the mud, rhino to go and have a mud wallow. Nothing there. Just plain hard caked clay. But which I think is just rather interesting. I think that things are going to get very interesting as the drought progresses. I'm just going to get onto a position here where you can have a look at the weather that seems to be blowing in or blowing around. Hopefully that huge rain that Wium spoke about earlier will come through. I'm not convinced myself, and I think that we're in for another fairly warm day, but there's some beautiful, perfect puffy clouds that have been blowing up on the southeasterly breeze. There you can see them. Picture book perfect puffy clouds. That's a lot of P's to send one perfect sentence. Still a very peaceful day indeed. Quite as peaceful as at that hyena den. Bryan and I both felt that we were about to fall asleep there. And James, Richard, you want to know about the terrapins and how they're dealing with the drought. James, they're pretty good at dealing with droughts. They just lurk under the surface. They go into a state called estivation. And estivation is like hibernation, but it's a result of dry rather than cold. So the terrapins go into estivation, they'll go under the ground, under the mud, and they'll just kind of exist on a very, they let their body temperatures just fluctuate with the surroundings, and the metabolism goes right down. They basically sort of snooze it up, sleep while it's dry, and they'll be fine. You know, that's how they make it through the winter. If they have to do it for the summer as well, they'll probably be okay. I've no doubt they will get a bit thin. But remember, none of the end ectothermic or poikilothermic or basically cold-blooded animals have to eat much. So, I mean, crocodiles and some lizards will go, I believe some snakes can go a year without eating. So can crocodiles. Big crocodiles can go 2 years without eating. And that's because they can drop their metabolisms very low. They don't have to maintain any kind of body heat. There's a lovely view out there. Let me just get out of the way of these trees. There always seems to be a tree exactly where you want to show someone the view. So that's looking due west out, and you can see the clouds moving gently in from the southeast.
Hello. Yeah, hello. It's pulling up now. So.
They do have some lions on Buffelshoek, so unfortunately we can't go there. But that's just to let you know that the animals are still around. And we're basically heading into the area where we last saw Karula heading yesterday, and hoping that she might pop around to this area at some stage. But I think today's got a very kind of peaceful feel about it, and I think that the predators are probably going to be well resting by this stage of the morning. And about 7:30 in the morning, of course, and already pretty hot. Definitely be spending some time in the swimming pool today. Phil in Phoenix. Your wife apparently is a fan, and we hope to go on safari with her one day. I hope that you are also going to become a fan of ours, Phil. You want to know about hardwoods. You're an architect, and you want to know which hardwood you can make furniture out of. There are a few out here. Not many trees out here, though, that you could plank, simply because the elephants live here, and where there are elephants, seldom trees get large enough for you to plank them. Make decent sort of furniture out of. Leadwood would be one, very hard wood. It's denser than water, about 1,100 kilograms per cubic meter. Obviously, that's denser than water, so if you put it in water, it will sink. Some of the other combretum trees, the red bush willow, Combretum apiculatum, would make very nice wood for furniture. And then I don't think the acacia is too much, but there is one called, there are two teak species that we get here. One called the roundleaf teak, and the other called the I forget what the English. It's called the Transvaal teak. That's right. So it's Pterocarpus angolensis and Pterocarpus rotundifolius, and both of those trees are excellent for furniture in the absence of elephants. Here, the roundleaf teak is normally just a sort of single stalk sticking out of the ground with an enormous rootstock underneath, and that rootstock gets larger and larger as those little stalks get pulled off by the elephants, so you get these enormous rootstocks sort of I don't know, 4 or 5 feet across with little stalks sticking out of them. Now in the absence of elephants, they turn into trees that you can make furniture out of, and likewise its cousin, the Transvaal teak. Not many of them here, in fact I've only ever seen one. They make very good furniture wood. So those are the two that I know about, Paul. Not a huge number, I wouldn't say. I think probably more up towards the forests inside, closer to the mountains, you might find more appropriate furniture building trees. Certainly that's where the yellow woods are, and I know many of the yellow woods almost went extinct as a result of people chopping them down for furniture. But all the trees out here are very slow growing, especially when there are elephants around. I suspect probably because of the elephants. We'll just drive down this road. This road is called Leadwood Road, and I'll show you a lovely leadwood on it with a fig tree growing out of it, a strangler fig. Everything is very much seemingly at peace at the moment. So now I think this is probably, I don't know, maybe somebody can tell me when the last time we saw a lion on Juma was. It seems like about 5 weeks ago that we last actually found a lion on Juma. There we go. Terry, you said the 23rd of December we saw a lion on Juma. Oh, that's good. It's not too long ago. I think that was one day in the drought, though. The lion drought, I mean. Oh, that's right, that was Scott. Scott had the male on, he had one of the Birmingham boys there on the cut line, the cheetah cut line. So it crossed gently into Juma briefly and then went out again. That sounds like a great sighting. I haven't seen a lion here for about 5 weeks. I don't know what they look like anymore. Of course, that's perfectly normal. The machinations of the Birmingham boys centralizing on this particular piece of land, is going to be a general lion absence for the next little while, at least. And as the drought goes on, of course, the lions are going to concentrate around the waterholes. And given that our waterholes are largely dry, that means they're going to be on places like Buffelshoek and Cheetah Plains until the grazing there runs out. Then we're going to see some action. Of course, it's a funny thing about being a guide or a ranger or somebody who likes to look for animals. Whenever you see an animal in one place, you expect to see them there again. We saw Kunuma down here a little while back, just before Big Cat Week, in that tree over there. And so every time I come past here, I expect to see him hanging from the tree. And just in from there, we saw Quarantine eating not too long ago as well. And I keep expecting to see him as well. There's a big bird. Where should I go? Right forward. Can you see it there? And on the tree. I think it's another one of the same species. That's another basilia. There are a few of them there. The other one into land. There are 3. Oh, you see that? Straight through here. 2 of them that have just landed. There you go. 2 battaliers. And there's a juvenile up to the left, which we can't really get a view of. Just love the super zoom, eh, Bryan? Mm-hmm. 2 mosquitoes, everybody. So those are 2 battalier, and we see them there quite frequently. There is a junior around, so I don't think there's anything in the way of a kill. I think that's just where they're roosting at the moment. There probably is a nest around there somewhere too. Oof, the heat is starting to build now. That sun, as I've said before, becomes a welding torch when the clouds burn off. And it's like it's burning through the back of my skull right now. Might have to put my hat on backwards, gangster style. Right, on we go. Asking a question that could open many cans of wormies. I'll give you the short answer, I think, to begin with. You want to know why it is that so many mammals engage in infanticide. What is the evolutionary function of it? The evolutionary function, James, has to do with parenting. Now, from an evolutionary standpoint, remember that the concept of the selfish gene means that each gene will act in its own best interests. And that means each organism will act in its own best interests, not in the best interests necessarily of the species to which it belongs. So lions don't act in the best interests of lions in general. They act in the best interests of themselves, and therefore by default that will benefit the species quite often over evolutionary time. Now, if you are a lion and you wish to leave a genetic legacy, then you must make sure that you breed as often as possible. Now, it is simply not possible to breed with a female who has got a baby who is already looking after a youngster. And therefore, if you want to leave an offspring, you must kill the baby of whatever, of another male, so that female will then accept you and breed with you. Now, this happens in lions, it happens in chimpanzees, it happens in hyenas, less so in hyenas because they're matriarchal societies. And you will be astonished to know how much throughout human history, and indeed probably still in some of the Stone Age societies around the world, infanticide is still a killer of young children. And that is simply because the males, you can have a discussion on this for days, but it boils down to the fact that for a female to mate, there's a tiny little pig, tiny little warthogs. They'd always run away long before we get anything like this close to them. Little pigs. Isn't that wonderful? Come on, kids, she says, let's just go behind this tree here. Apparently these ones aren't as small as Jamie's ones. Well, Jamie's got smaller warthogs than me. She's just better than me, and that's just how it goes. So, back onto the infanticide discussion. I forget precisely where I was in the discussion, but completely where I was in the discussion. Let's just have a look at these warthogs quickly and I'll get back to you, James. I'm being very relaxed about having this around. I've never seen warthogs this close to us. This is fantastic. And it's suckling. You can see those bottom tusks. Those are the things, if you ever happen to find yourself in a dark alley with a warthog, don't worry about the top tusks. Those are the ones you've got to watch out for. You can see them as she chews. They sharpen up against the bottom tusks every time she chews. Little ones are suckling. This is spectacular, everybody. I never see this. Warthogs normally just run away. I'm closer than Jamie's, of course, so we definitely will. Bryan, do you want to stop the film? Should we just quickly flick it on for the sake of it? We're just going to start the virtual reality rig. Okay, I'll go to shoot. Simply because we just don't get this sort of stuff before. And we're moving very slowly to switch everything on. That's it. I got it. And now let's see how they react to the sound. Don't worry, relax, all is well, all is well. Just now recording. Is the sound thing ready? You know, the sound thing takes longer than the computers at the NASA space station to fire up. There we go, it's recording. And you can just sync it with a click, not a clap. Warthogs. 2 tiny baby piglets. We never see this. Already starting to graze on their knees. This is fantastic. Of course, as the heat starts to build, so do the flies and their enthusiasm, which will eventually result in my flapping my hands. There's one trying to cross the road now. Very nice question, obvious one, of course, from Jamo. Why on earth do warthogs feed on their knees? Well, let's see if these ones do it again. There, look there. Look at the way the snout is designed, and look at the way that little piglet, even at its age, is feeding. You see how it's digging with the snout. It's not only kind of using its teeth, and when you're on your knees like that, you can wedge yourself against the ground, and you can dig out the nutritious roots and rhizomes that are part of the grass plants, and that's what warthogs are looking for often. And so they can get on their knees and use the hard snout. There's some cartilage in the snout there that helps them to dig. Imagine how hard their knees must be, how calloused. This is incredible. They're standing maybe 10 feet from the vehicle. And you can even hear them chewing, yeah, as Bryan says. Now, a lot of the questions we get surround orphans, and I think it's because it's a big thing for human beings. Of course, we have a thing about orphans, about adopting them or making sure that they're okay. That's part of human egalitarian society. And we get a lot of questions about whether animals will do the same thing. And Shannon, you want to know if warthogs would adopt orphaned piglets. I don't actually know for sure, Shannon. I don't think so. It's possible. It's possible that if a female was lactating and a baby of another sounder member, say a sister or a cousin, maybe she would adopt one if the mother died. I would think it's unlikely, though, unless it was a related female, in which case maybe. There are very few mammals that will, that engage in the practice of adoption, especially of unrelated males or females. Patrick and Arizona, you've asked a completely unanswerable question. Those are the best kind. You want to know if a warthog is related to a javelina. Bryan, do you have any idea what a javelina is, other than a character in an Alice in Wonderland book?
Not the foggiest.
But it's called a peccary as well. Now that's starting to become slightly more familiar. Patrick, I still don't know what a peccary is, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that. Right, apparently it's a pig-like animal from North America and South America. Yeah, I think I can picture it. I'm sure it is related. I don't think very closely, of course, because one is in the New World and one the Old World. We are in the Old World. And a peccary or javelina, about which I'm going to have to learn when I get home, occurs in the New World or in the Americas. But if it is pig-like, it will be related in some way. But not as closely related. So apparently not closely related. I'm getting lots of information here from the final control. Not closely related to wild boar, and so therefore probably not closely related to these pigs. And that'll be because of the Atlantic in the middle and how long it's been there. Pigs, of course, or these warthogs are quite closely related to the European wild boar. This is the most astonishing sighting. We just don't see them like this. Look at those little, that little white bit of fur that comes up out of the warthog's face. Looks like tusks, and I'm sure that's to con predators into thinking that they have formidable razor-like tusks there. A piglet is a very vulnerable little animal. For a leopard especially, a leopard or a lion will devour one of these things. A favorite meal. That's enough of that. They don't like the virtual reality stuff, the piglets. Jenny, is eating on their knees a learned or innate behavior? I think it's probably an innate behavior in the same way that suckling is, Jenny. I couldn't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it would be. I think it's probably almost impossible to tell. Well, it's probably not. I mean, it wouldn't be impossible to tell at all. If you adopted a warthog piglet that had lost its mother and raised it as a baby, you'd very quickly soon see if it was fed on its knees or not. I think you'll find that they would. Now, Anna Marie raised an interesting point. You say they're so tiny when they're born, they must lose a lot of them. Yes, you do lose quite a few of them, but you know, most of these animals that have a litter, or this is a litter of piglets, if it's a very big litter, you will find that they lose more often, lose more than survive. A small litter tends to be an investment in parental care and sort of also an increased gestation period that will hopefully result in 10% of them, maybe even a bit more. But there certainly is an extensive amount of parental care here. But they are vulnerable. I mean, out here, those warthog piglets are much faster than us. And I remember watching a warthog piglet running away from a lion once and thinking that the piglet would get away. I mean, they're so much faster than we are, for example. But that lion hauled the piglet in 3 strides. It was incredible how fast the lion it was. Just kind of a 1, 2, 3 grab, and the piglet was gone. We would never have been able to catch it. So they are very vulnerable at this age. They will be quite close by, I think, to a burrow to which they can run. But a leopard lurking in the bushes here would be very pleased to come across these little piggies. road now. I don't really want to move away from them. So James Richard, I hope I did answer your question sufficiently on infanticide and why, from an evolutionary point of view, it does happen. And I find it a fascinating subject. Of course, the male and female breeding strategies of all mammals are very different, and that's largely based on the fact that for the male mammal, the risk of a mating event is negligible to nothing, whereas for a female, of course, it results in pregnancy, which is very expensive, and then child rearing, which is even more expensive. And so that's why a female, obviously, who has piglets, little ones, could be piglets, could be cubs, could be babies, is less likely to want to mate, and therefore the reason for infanticide becomes a bit more clear. And Natasha, you're absolutely correct. The rain is needed. The grazers don't have much, and while we're looking at that Warthog sow right in front of the vehicle, they are often the ones that suffer the most, warthogs. They're obviously not designed to migrate to great distances to water. They are water dependent. They need the water and the moisture in the food that they eat. So yes, they will be vulnerable to the... Look at her, she's eating soil there. See that? Eating a little bit of soil to get a few minerals, taking her vitamins for the day. There they go. Right, everyone, what a marvellous, marvellous warthog sighting that was. The best I've had here yet, especially to have the little piggies. Hi, little piggies. The mother is totally unaffected by the vehicle. What have you got? There we go. Right, let's head across to Jamie, see what she's up to. I'll catch up with you shortly.
Between Wium and myself, we have driven pretty much, well, almost every single road on Juma. As to where Tingana disappeared to, your guess is as good as mine. He is a mystery to me. Maybe he's off with Karula somewhere sharing a kill. We'll just have to listen to Safari to find out. Thank you for joining us. It has been a wonderfully entertaining morning, and a big thanks to Wium for all of his company and camera work. And thank you for all of your wonderful questions. We will catch you this afternoon for the Sunset Safari. Bye, guys.
And we are back again, coming out onto the southern boundary, turning to the west, heading for home. Some breakfast with seeds and coffee. Brian, what are you going to have for breakfast?
Some fruit.
Some fruit.
A glass of water.
And a glass of water. I think today is fry-up day, which means that there might be some eggies, some bacon, some tomatoes, mushrooms. Always lots of coffee for me. Not for you, Brian. You don't drink coffee? No, it's just the devil.
Yes.
We're just turning onto Twin Dams Road, which of course is a good place to look, because that's where Karula and Tingana were yesterday. Now, Kathy in Nebraska, yes. Your question about the drought in swimming pools is a valid one. Do animals ever try and break in to drink out of a swimming pool? Certainly, elephants do all the time. If it gets dry, they will walk through the fence and drink. Certainly, I'm not sure about some of the other animals. There is a fence around where the pool is, and some animals may try and jump over it. Certainly, the nyala and kudu easily jump over it, so they might have a go. Hyenas, if they were desperate enough, could dig under it. Warthogs could probably dig under it. But the water of course, see giraffe. Look at it walk. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Just like a hyena. Beautiful giraffe ball. You can hear the kingfishers calling above us. There goes the giraffe. All right, everybody, we're pretty much done with the show. We've got a minute left, so we'll just keep driving along. And just to say that the absolutely yes, the pool will become vulnerable to thirsty animals, but thirsty animals also become vulnerable to the pool because there's a lip to it, and you know, often animals fall in. We've had to rescue elephants out of pools before, quite often. What else have we had to rescue out of pools? Yeah, elephants. I'd hate to find Peter from the pan inside there. But hopefully that eventuality will not occur. Right, a big thank you to Jamie and Wium on the other car for all of their efforts this morning in the wild dog hunt. Thanks to Kirsty and Jerry in the final control, and of course Bryan and the fun. Thank you, Bryan. And all of you for your questions and comments. We will see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock for the Sunset Safari. Until then, stay safe wherever you are. Bye-bye.